Going pretty
We'll
good.
come to order.
What doesn't run by there?
Not Cottonwood, I mean Chicago Drive. Oops.
It was him.
I didn't say a word. If you join me, please, for a prayer for guidance. Our gracious God and Heavenly Father, we humbly approach your throne of grace. How fortunate we are that we can speak and prevail upon the Creator of the universe. We thank you for that. We marvel at your opulence. Now, we also thank you for the blessings you've placed upon this community. We pray for a continuance of this. I also pray that you will bless this board, give them astute minds and clarity and wisdom. And we ask these things in your name. Amen.
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 You'll join me for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the record show that all board members are present except for Mr. Vanderklok, who is excused because of medical reasons. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any questions concerning it? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay, it's carried. Okay, we come to our public comment period. Anyone that wishes to talk to the board from the public, please step forward and announce your name, address, and you have 3 minutes each.
Kelly Britton, 6656 Louise Avenue. I respectfully request that you two reevaluate the proposed sign that was designed for the library and township offices. The proposed sign is 7.5 feet tall and 15 feet wide, which is much larger than the zoning ordinances allow for others that I can see, that I understand in the zoning ordinances. Another consideration is the other forms of communication that we do already have are not utilized to their full potential. I encourage you to lead by example, and make the new sign to conform to the zoning ordinances that the community, Chamber of Commerce, and local businesses came to agree upon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aye.
Hello, Jacqueline Larkin, 8294 Cottonwood Drive. I too would like to address the signage that you're thinking of doing out front here. The very large 7.5 foot by 15 foot sign, which will contain what looks like to be a 3 by 5 foot LCD TV. I don't know if any of you have spoken to the people that live around the school where it has a flashing sign on all the time. It is extremely annoying to have that flashing LED TV flashing in their windows all the time. And I really have to question the wisdom of putting that type of sign out front here in front of all these houses that live right across the way. It's like if you stand outside your house when your TV's going and you see that TV flashing, that's what they're going to be getting on the other side of the street here. And I don't understand why you'd be putting up a sign that doesn't even conform to the zoning ordinances for a residential neighborhood. And I just think that you've really overblown what you're trying to do. If you need to communicate with people and tell them that there's things going on, I don't understand why you wouldn't use the red LED type signs that do not create such a light pollution. So I'd really like you to rethink your plan today for giving okay to that sign. Thank you.
Anyone further? If not, we'll close that portion of the public comment. Next thing you have before you on the agenda is the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to grant the consent agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Is there any item on there that a board member wishes to remove? If not, all in favor of the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It is carried. Next on the item is the grant resolution for a grant for Maplewood Park. And tonight we have Mr. Smith with us, and going to ask him to come and give us a little overview. He's done a great job on it. We've seen it, and I don't know if it's been on, yeah, it's probably been on the website, but here, Mike. Let's see if we can get one of these.
There you go. You got one?
Here, yeah,
Can we turn the light off?
here's a backup.
Yeah.
Well, I think you all are familiar with everything that's happened previously there at Maplewood Park. And so we started out looking at a plan to develop a walking trail that would basically have traverse the entire lake. And as we started discussing that walking trail, there's been, I think legitimately, there's been some past concerns about the water quality and some of it, it's just adjacent to agricultural land. And as you all know, if you go to the north and to the west a little bit, a lot of agricultural land, drainage that comes down into the lake. So we wanted to, along with the development of the trail, prepare a plan that would address any of the existing and future runoff from these farm fields, and whether that runoff has contaminants in it or fertilizers. We think it's very appropriate, and there's been some past experiences with that. So we want to make sure that Maplewood Lake continues to be clean, and we want to have it very usable for some of the opportunities. So in addition to the trail that we would start here at the end of the parking lot, and it would loop up and around and again, and that's about 5,600 feet of trail. So we end up with nicely over, nicely over a mile of trail when we connect to the existing sidewalk and then run up along the street and then connect to the existing walkways. Along with that, because of the way the runoff comes from the agricultural lands to the north, we're creating in this area, we call it a bioretention area, which is basically we're going to recreate a little bit of a wetland at the north west corner of the lake. Along with that, we're looking at, we call them bioretention swales, and I actually, where we do with this kind of stuff, but I reviewed this with my expert environmental consultant, actually a former DNR guy. And he felt that would be a really appropriate way to basically, just as the runoff comes here, we just basically have some, call them ditches if you want to, but they're bioretention areas. And it's not a big expensive part of the plan, but again, it continues to protect Maplewood Lake. And then we started looking at the opportunities to provide legitimate, barrier-free, and good accessibility for everybody to Maplewood Lake. So we have a walkway here that'd be at a barrier-free grade, and then we have a set of steps, and then there'd be a floating, basically access pier and a barrier-free kayak and canoe launch area. And these are, the Ottawa County has one. Do you recall what park that's at?
Riverside, I think.
Riverside.
Yeah.
And this would provide the opportunity for people, for everybody, along with anyone who might have a disability, to access Maplewood Lake with a canoe, kayak, or even a car-top boat. And then as I looked at it, I thought, well, if you're going to have people have the opportunity to kayak in a barrier-free sense, it would be really intriguing to go and put basically buoys in the lake. So when I created a mile-long, basically kayak route. Now, then after we developed this plan, then I understand that Grand Valley State University has and wants to continue to use this as a kayak classroom, a kayak training area. So it kind of added to the opportunity to let people get, really accessible into the pond with kayaks, and then create this, basically this kayak trail in Stillwater. And not, the rivers are good, but if you're maybe not as adept at kayaking, this would be just a great spot, and a great spot for families and kids and people to get there and actually use the lake effectively. We have quite a lot of landscaping. We want to do a nice buffer landscaping along the perimeter of between the agricultural land and the walkway. We are going to look at acquiring about 50 extra feet along the west side here, about 30 feet along the northwest side, so we have plenty of room to put the trail on top of the bank. The boardwalks are just incredibly expensive. We have a small section of boardwalk here over the existing drainage, and we have one down at the bottom that would be basically like boardwalk bridges. Future, we'd have a boardwalk overlook here. We've to control costs, we left that as a future, and then we have a potential little gazebo and another dock at the bottom that would be both in the future too. Some nice landscaping along the street here. Every time I go there, it's kind of like I just feel like I want to have a little bit of landscaping. Not anything that would block anybody's view, nice high branch trees, but just basically some street trees along this area. And so it really creates a whole nother level of recreation opportunities at Maplewood Park and so we have this nice big body of water, so fishing, kayaking, leisurely canoeing, and we think that it has some nice potentials for community enhancements. So can I clarify or answer any questions?
Does the board have any questions of Mr. Smith concerning this proposed project?
I have a question. I appreciate how you use the existing sidewalk there. Is that to the, what would that be? Is that to the east of the plantings you'd put in? Is the sidewalk to the east of that?
The plantings, I think, yes.
But they're low enough that if you're walking along there, you don't lose the view of the lake?
Right, high branch, deciduous street trees, call them street trees, just high branch trees, so we can see underneath that.
I see. Okay. I love the kayak course. I mean, I think it's a great idea to put the buoys out there. I hadn't really thought about that, but
I think as a clarification, the house is on the south end there. We already own that land, correct? Correct. So while it might look and people might treat it like it's their own backyard right now.
That is all, that is existing township land.
Okay.
The property line runs along here, and we're well within the limit of the property line. And in fact, I did not put a lot of trees in there, just a few trees, just along the trail. Didn't want to block anybody's existing views of the pond. I don't believe there will be any impact on those.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from the board? We are, because it is a request for a grant, we will be having a hearing, so you people from the audience certainly will have an opportunity, so I appreciate if you can hang on here, Mr. Smith, till the end of the hearing, and then feel free to leave. So at this time, I'll open the public hearing. If anyone wants to come and comment on this plan or the proposal, or have questions for Mr. Smith, if he can answer them, please come forward. This is your opportunity.
Michael Bosch, 896 Fairwood Court. Did I hear that right? Grand Valley is going to train kayak training or something there? Grand Valley State University?
They currently use it for kayaking.
Oh, okay. Which I guess my only suggestion would be, let's make sure we charge if we got Grand Valley using our, like we used to charge, especially if we're going to spend $500,000. Well, depending on what the grant is, but if we're creating fun for other cities and townships, maybe we should charge non-residents. Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, if there, oh, I'm sorry, Kelly?
Just real quickly, I was wondering about the trees on the east side. Is it the east side I'm looking at, where the residences are right there? I understand it's not their property going up to the lake, but will it block their view of the lake, I guess is just what I'm wondering, and, you know, you
He'll
kind
tell you
of
what kind of trees.
open for them as a resident. If you live there, you kind of like that.
I completely agree, and for that trees that we use and where we place them, we will be sure to not block views, because that is important. If I live here, I'd want to be able to.
Yeah. Okay, that was just what I was wondering. Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, we'll close the public hearing. Could you put the grant resolution up there, Mrs. Manier? This is a grant, you've probably all been on the website to see what it is. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the grant resolution.
So
As it's
moved.
printed. It's moved. Support. Okay, any discussion concerning the grant resolution? You might want to, Mr. Superintendent, just comment, as Mr. Smith has before, on the discussion at Finance on the percentages and which one we are going for and points and so on.
Basically, if you can see in the resolution, the total project estimate is $448,000, and we're asking the state for a grant to cover 70% of that cost. So the township cost would be the 30%, or the $134,000 that you see there. The grant has to be in by the end of the month, and we should find out by the end of the year whether we have obtained that grant. So construction then could begin late next year, would be the timing. Now, the grants are awarded, one of the criteria is a point system that they allocate to the grants, and the higher we contribute, the more points you would receive. So with a 30% contribution, we're not getting extra points for a higher contribution, but also applying for the grant has additional costs. So, I think the idea is to get the maximum amount of the grant dollars toward this project, and then if we don't get it this year, we can always then reapply in the future if you want to do it at a higher percentage. But by asking for more money, it does lower our chances of obtaining the grant, just so you know.
Board have any questions or comments?
From our past experience, we've had some success with these grants. I'm trying to recall, and I don't remember most recently, what percentage has worked for us. I mean,
Well,
in a benchmark?
the last grant was such a much larger project at Maplewood. We asked for only a third grant, where we paid 2/3.
I see.
And so we've done 50-50 as well in the
Yep.
past, so
Yep.
this is a little bit different now.
Have we ever gone this low in seeking a grant and been successful?
Well, I know we have done a 20% for land acquisition and been successful,
Okay.
but I don't know about a project like this
Yeah.
where we've been successful. So it all depends how many projects apply
Yeah.
and where we'll rank,
Yeah.
and that's the hard part to predict.
What's your instinct?
I think if, for a project like this, if we're going for the grant and incurring all the additional cost of the grant, we at least ought to take the opportunity to try to maximize the grant dollar, because the grant does add a lot of cost to the project for the requirements they place on it. So the project could be changed and you could lower costs if you didn't go with the state's funds. So to me, if you're going to get their funds and the requirements, we ought at least try to maximize those costs. So it's worth taking that chance to obtain the grant.
If the grant is rejected at this amount, can we reapply with the same project in a different amount?
Next year, yes.
Okay.
What would get cut?
Not identical, but, I'm sorry? Mike, can I clarify that?
I think we may have a little glitch,
Okay.
and I think that I need to bring that up, okay? I think that maybe there was some misinterpretation of numbers. These grant matches the formulas are quite complex. And this is the place or not, but we have what Terry had said was that if you request 275, 5 points, you would have to match it with 173. So 275 and 173.
Going down from 31 to 30.
Okay. It's kind of complex the way Terry.
Sorry.
If you got them, light them up.
And the grant is over $400,000. $400 minus the grant cost of $5,000.
I'm sure that was referring to candles, right?
No. See, we're doing that moratorium. That goes back a long way.
So the match, we have it now, sorry about that. The match amount is going to be 173 in their formula.
Our match amount?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just strike that 134 and put in 173.
Yeah.
Okay, anything further from the board?
Does that change the percentages then, or do the percentages?
31%.
31%,
Kind
yeah.
of complicated, when you get over $400,000, the grant percentages count. They did
Okay.
it a while back to try to make it better for communities that didn't have a lot of money. But it really kind of, if you do have
It's
the
not,
money.
it's
put towards
31% of the
it,
400,000.
so
Okay.
It's $400,000 minus the grant request divided by $400,000 equals your percentage.
It's pretty late for that kind of math.
So that's, I had it all written out, so I gave it.
Okay.
So your office assists with the grant writing? Oh, okay.
Here's just the way the grant is going together now. She's got this manual she keeps with all the different pieces of grants are there.
Complicated?
Complicated and detailed and over detailed. Work with Dan and we do all, and even the plan, we strategize on the elements that are going to provide us the optimum scoring, because the scoring is competitive and it's got to be more and more difficult over the
Yep.
years. And so that's part of the environmental, that's the barrier-free accessibility, that's the trails, I mean, that's the uniqueness. We've got to get all the points. But I want to say, I want to offer though, that if you told me to develop a plan with no grants in mind, I would have developed the same plan. It's a plan that really meets what should happen at Maplewood Park. So it's not just a plan for a grant.
Yep.
I have several questions. What would be something that was on that plan, though, that's required because we're seeking a grant?
Required?
Yeah, like Dan mentioned, there's additional expense. What specifically was included in that plan that wouldn't have had to be included?
Barrier-free design,
Yes.
right?
You wouldn't have to put a barrier-free kayak, canoe, launch facility, but that provides such community benefits overall that it makes sense. But you wouldn't have to do that. In fact, if you didn't get your grant, you may want to, weigh that out in the future.
So that kayak launch is somewhat handicap accessible. If you got upper body strength, at least. It's the one with railings and you just slide on into rollers. Okay, yeah. And you get points for that.
And you do get points for that. And that's a good thing that the state is encouraging that kind of recreation.
I see.
I've talked to other kayakers who have disabilities, and it ends up being a very good sport for people with upper body strength.
Did I hear you right that, are we penalized if we have a good balance sheet as a township and less
Yes.
given? Yeah, that's like every other federal and government program. The better you plan, the more you steward, the less likely it is you receive. And what is your instinct then, as having done a lot of this grant writing, about this proposal and its potential for success? I know you can't predict, but do you have a...
50-50.
5 years ago, I would have said it's a slam dunk. Okay? Today, it's not so certain. Okay? a lot of money's gone in other directions in the state, and we talked about that, what you all can do. Will help.
There's a lot of elements in this one with the bioretention and those swales and the wetland creation that do get a lot of natural resource points. So we will get a lot more points than some of the grants that will be written.
Okay. Anything else? And I'm sure we'll likely get a lot of help and push from our friends in Lansing. Yes. Fortuitous. Okay, if there's nothing else from the board, Mrs. Manier, would you, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote on this, please.
John Schwab,
Yes.
Ed Tuttle,
Yes.
Dale Moore,
Yes.
Carol Scola,
Yes.
Bob Valerius,
Yes.
Jim Meringa.
Yes.
It is carried. Next item is the township office/library sign. The motion recommended by the Finance Committee is to approve the proposal for the sign and accept the bid from Icon Sign.
Are you waiting for a motion, or?
I'm waiting for someone.
I'll move to approve.
Support. Okay, discussion? Questions anyone has?
I'm in favor of replacing the sign we have. I think we've talked about it before. I'm in favor of something involving LED. I think that too communicates, there's an ability to communicate that. I mean, it's part of the evolution of the sign, be it for a large church, be it for a school, be it for a township office. I'd like to hear tonight maybe a little more about this, the mathematical analysis that must be done, I presume, by those who sell these signs about proximity to roadway and size and numbers of cars and likelihood of, at that speed without a stop sign there and so on. There's got to be some range that we've probably had described to us that says, hey, this is generally the size you need, or it's ineffective. Because you hear the thoughts or comments as well, is it too big, or is it just right? I guess Dan or maybe one of you has been part of that committee services, or
We gave them the kind of things that you wanted to see on the sign, and they gave us back alternatives to display those signs from this distance at this speed. And if you wanted to display images, this is the kind of display you had to have. If you wanted just words that scrolled across, you had other options. But with that speed, that was more difficult to have a smaller reader board to see the words displayed at the speed that goes down these, cars go past here. So based on the images you wanted to put out there, that's how this size was determined. But it is large sign, it is, there. So.
talk about did they give us a range and say, you want to probably be between this size and that if this is what you're trying to accomplish?
Well, they proposed different sizes for us and then wanted to know what kind of things we wanted to put on the sign that people would be able to see.
Yeah.
And that's where they came up with, well, if you want to display those images,
Yeah.
you need this size.
Maybe you can enlighten me.
You can go smaller, but
Maybe you can enlighten me, though. I'm trying to remember what they can do with the sign that we were looking for, that, as you keep referring to as the images and so on. What specifically were we envisioning? Is it a logo next to, like slip and slide?
You could put the slip and slide event, you could put someone sliding on the sign,
Yeah.
slip and slide Saturday. So that's the kind of things that,
Yeah.
if you want to be able to do that, this is the kind of sign that you're looking at. So.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the...
I think it was for identification and information mainly. Also, clarity, you can go higher resolution with more pixels in it than...
Right, you can display more than words, and that's what you wanted to be able to do.
This one
put
was a
more than
medium
words.
resolution, I believe, wasn't it, Dan? This was a medium, because I know there was a high resolution, but we didn't go with that because that was for higher speeds.
Yeah.
But this was for 45 miles per hour, and it
Yeah.
was a medium
Figured
resolution.
they had something, some sort of study. And I don't have, I like the idea of the more modern technology versus just the scrolling LED, because I don't think you pick up quite as much. That technology, I think, is good. I was examining more about not knowing size-wise how we, had to analyze that. But if there were ever a problem just in terms of its brightness, that's the sort of thing that could always be addressed with a 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. shut off, or who knows what, if it became an issue, but I like the more modern, what they can present on there.
I kind of agree with a couple of Jim's comments on that. I'd like there to be a new sign. I like the idea of there being an LED. I have some reservations about our size being allowable for us and not to businesses, which could be reconciled two ways, right? We could go with a smaller sign, or we could revise the ordinance at some point in the future to allow businesses to do a similar size on their own. My reservations are more from the standpoint of, we're going to put township staff in the position in the future when a business comes in and goes, here, I want to do this sign, just the same size as the one you guys got out front, and we go, well, that's not allowed. Nobody else can do in that size except for us, and I think it's going to be an awkward position for staff to be in when they've got to justify that to businesses in the future. So I'm a little concerned about the size. Primarily from that standpoint, I don't know. If there is no rush to the decision, I don't know if the board wants to take another meeting to evaluate a couple other sizes and the costs associated with that. I'm flexible. I do want there to be a new sign, but I want it to be right, and I'd really like it to be similar to what we allow businesses to allow.
I have a question. Aren't there a different standards, zoning standards, like for schools and churches and so on? Or are they required the same?
Schools and townships.
Schools and
right?
townships don't, the regular standards don't apply. That's what what
Okay,
she's bringing
schools
out
and
there.
townships.
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to learn more about the brightness, and is that going to be a problem for our residents out there?
Well, I think the program is so that at 10, 11 o'clock, it no longer goes on. I certainly shouldn't be any brighter than the car lights going down the road. But to turn it off, and we don't know if it will be. And, most of I imagine there's one bedroom, but most of them are living rooms that face this. I don't know. That's guesswork right now. We don't know.
Yeah, I feel like we can address that with timing,
Yeah.
maybe a shut-off period, but I'm with Chad in that we've had that sign out there for 20 years or whatever it's been, and not as much as a punt maneuver as much as to say, have we thought through thoroughly enough? I'm taking your word, and you guys do a great job, Dan, when we commission, you're just doing what we commission you to do, so I'm not being critical. I'm just saying I don't know enough about what the science of that is, because I don't want to spend a lot of money and have people go, I can't even read it. I'm going by so fast. It's pointless. But if there was a range there, and we find we're on the upper end of that range, we could get more toward the lower end of acceptable and still have it be readable, usable, useful. Yeah, I'm not married to the size that's proposed. I'm married to effectiveness.
I would be comfortable, too, if you want to look at it again, I mean, as far as according to other businesses, but the resolution of that sign was for 45 miles an hour. That's what they recommended.
Yeah.
So if the speed limit was 45.
Yeah.
So, but
I wonder, and here again, Dan, you may say I've done all this, but the sign company recommending is the guy selling,
Yeah.
not suggesting, bad motive, but
there was
yeah,
low, medium,
the bigger
and
the sign, the
high.
more the cost, maybe the more likely they are to push the upper end of the range versus maybe
This is not where they started.
no, they started bigger.
They started smaller.
Oh, smaller, okay.
They started smaller, but that wouldn't display
Yeah,
the words and the messages that were desired to be displayed.
yeah.
And the visibility, because they would be shown on two screens,
Yeah.
a second screen, which you see on some signs where you only read part of the words and you don't see what's coming next. And if we were comfortable with that, then a smaller one would work, and that's when they wanted to be able to see the display at that speed and not have it changing so fast because of the speed. Also, it would have to repeat quicker or change quicker.
This is not scrolling at all.
Well, you can, but I'm just
Can.
saying, if you want, you can see the message where you don't have to scroll as often, where on a
Right.
smaller sign, you would have to roll the sign. So that's when they went to this size. They actually started smaller. to be in line with our ordinance is what was initially proposed, so.
I think a long time I was reading ordinances about signs, and I don't know whether there was one that was proposed for this community or another community, and the sign could not change more than once every 30 seconds. Well, I mean, you know, when you go, that's a spot sign, it's 10, 15 words, and
Yeah.
you got, it's going to be 30 seconds before it changes. I mean, our mind functions, most minds function much more rapidly than that, than having one message every 30 seconds. Okay, anything further? Okay, there's a motion on the floor to approve that sign with a bid from Icon.
I guess just a question, as it is right now, I'm going to be a no vote, but I might be different 2 weeks from now. I don't know if others, if you, just throwing it out there, that if we want to punt and evaluate a couple other alternatives at all, or if we're willing to commit to reviewing the signing ordinance at some point in the future to allow businesses the same size. I just think as soon as we put a big sign up out front, we're going to have to start answering that question for businesses of why they can't have the same size. I see just down the road in the last week, I think I saw somebody install a brand new digital sign just down Baldwin a little bit further. And I think other businesses are going to start moving that direction. And if we put up one, I would expect them to start asking for the same size.
Would you also like to ask for legislative changes for schools then too, that they're required?
I can only talk about what's within our control. I can't, you know, I
Well, that can
I
be
would
within
advocate
our-
our legislators
Well, yeah, I'm here.
perhaps
That can be
consider
with-
what schools are allowed.
That can be within our control.
Yeah.
We have some major questions we're looking at now as far as the Veterans Plaza, and maybe with Kmart and so forth. There's some issues we've been looking at. I'd like to have us give some consideration, maybe having a special board meeting to hash some of these things out. And this would be one of those I think I'd like to discuss. There's been a number of questions come up about the Veterans Plaza. If we could meet and talk and go through some of those basic questions that have come up, I think it'd be very helpful. This is one of them I'd like to have a chance to talk about.
Go ahead. Talk.
In a special board meeting where we'd have a chance to discuss all of them.
All of,
Well, I was looking, I was going to mention this tonight. I think the Veterans Recognition Park, the Senior Center,
okay.
Rush Creek Pathway, Kmart property. And then this, I think a special meeting, we talked about this before, when we did have one, it was very, very productive. I'd even recommend next Monday. I think we have a service committee meeting, but if we were able to meet at, say, 4 o'clock, with this heavy of an agenda, and I'd like to see more public input, particularly on the Veterans Plaza, whether or not we might even have to get some committees, and I think we should set a date to go to the Senior Center and talk with the seniors and show them, we've got some beautiful drawings here.
We're talking about the sign now.
Yeah, but let's get this in people's hands, and so I'm pushing more towards that we have a special meeting, and that this would be one of those things we'd put on the agenda to discuss. I think we'd learn more, and I'd feel more comfortable about voting if we waited 2 weeks. Otherwise, I'd probably join Chad on this.
Yeah.
But I don't
Appreciate
hear
that.
Chad saying, and neither am I saying, you know, this is one of those you just keep punt. I think there's agreement here that we want to sign. I think in
Yes.
short order, we can evaluate what it is that we just discussed.
Yeah, I'm grateful for the point we're at. I mean, we
Yeah.
asked for this information, Dan brought it to us just like we asked,
Right,
so
I
I'm
understand.
glad where we're at. I'm just,
Yeah.
you know, voicing my concerns because I haven't had a chance to before. So if we, you know, I'm happy that we can take a vote and we'll see how the vote comes out, and maybe if the vote doesn't pass, we just do the same thing again a couple weeks from now and look at a different size, or we can punt the decision.
There's not a point in, I mean, there's 3 of us already saying that we would like to look at it more carefully. At best, there's a deadlock. There's not a point in voting on it tonight. I think as much as, all I'm trying to say is I don't think it has to be something, though, that we delay. So let's address these concerns, and let's make a decision maybe the next meeting.
So I'd move to table this decision until the next board meeting.
Support.
Okay, it's moved and supported to postpone this issue until the next meeting. Questions on the postponement or tabling? Seeing none, all in favor of postponing, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It's carried. It's postponed until next meeting.
Chad, are we going to give Dan or someone instructions to what to do between now and the
Answered
next?
the discussion tonight, and my expectation is he'll probably show us some of the other options that were available from the sign company based on that. I guess if you can maybe circulate that to us, just to show us what a couple of the other options are, and maybe we'll have a recommendation from that at the next meeting.
Good.
Okay, next is the construction management and architectural services for new senior center. This also came out of
11.
finance to approve accepting the proposal from Lakewood.
We
for
missed number
building.
11, no?
Oh, I'm sorry. New and updated signs. That's to authorize the superintendent to place new or updated signs in those following parks.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Questions concerning those? Those will not be neon.
Right. I recall that we
Light.
went through these last summer, or last it was. We looked at it pretty thoroughly then, and I think it was to bring some consistency
Yes.
with
Yeah,
the new
one-
logo and with the signage, huh?
And one's already been installed at the cemetery,
Cemetery.
right? And we've all had a chance to drive past that and see that, so this would just be consistent with that, so common branding.
Some know Woodcrest was falling apart.
Oh, yeah, even if you look at the soccer bowl sign, you know. But what did you guys think? I liked the sign at the cemetery a lot, but one thing I did raise with Dan, and I don't know if he mentioned it within the offices to anybody, but I just noticed, not to be picky, but the words on the sign were matching to the T, and the logo we'd approved was 3 colors. And all I said to Dan was, and it was a different blue on the words than what we've had adopted as our logo. All I said to Dan is, I just feel like we need to be consistent in our branding so that wherever we use our logo, we're using it consistently. Whether we like the brighter blue that was put on this sign or whether we like what we originally had approved, I guess I frankly don't have a strong opinion about that, but what did the rest of you think about the blue that was chosen, the fact that it matches the T, and that it's different than the logo we adopted a few months back, which had 3 colors?
Well, I think it was her recommendation that we went with a brighter blue on the sign because you can see it better. So, and I noticed it too, that it was brighter, but I think it's so that we can see it better. So we could probably change the color on the cards if we wanted to, but.
That would be addressing the color of the blue, but how about the fact that we're now down to 2 colors instead of 3? Does that matter to anybody? So all I'm saying is it's got to be consistent. Remember, because the T, we had a form of blue, and then the words were almost like an aqua or a teal.
Right, yeah.
And the T was kind of more of a darker blue, but not quite navy. And the G was more like a Jennison green. Again, it's a tempest in a teapot. It's not that big a deal, but I think we had at least be, I'm no branding expert, I think you want to use your brand the same everywhere, right? Yeah? We're about to build a bunch of signs. I'm just asking.
I agree with the consistency of branding. I'm sorry, I did not notice a difference in colors.
No, I didn't. I noticed
I'm
the brighter
flexible.
blue, but I didn't notice the other. I'm not sure. I haven't gone by the sign since I got back from Arizona, but looking at the picture, I didn't see a difference online with any other colors. Just the blue was different, I thought. But what else did you see? I mean, there was no aqua blue on it then? You didn't see-
Right. The 2 blues we had in the original adopted, neither one of those blues is there. It's an entirely new blue,
Okay.
both the words and the T.
Yeah.
And Dale, I don't mean to usurp you here. It was a question I had that I was hoping that we could give input on because we're about to spend money to really brand ourselves in a bigger way. Because I think most people right now would say, I don't know what the new logo is. I haven't seen it enough to know what it is. But once these signs go up, oh yeah, That's the new logo, you know?
What would you like?
I said I don't have a preference for which color as much as for consistency, so,
So you'd like consistency. That's the number one thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's all. Yeah,
You have a preference of color?
not really. We had that little battle months ago, so. Remember, I wanted the color of all three schools. I wanted maroon and blue and green and whatever.
I was with you, Jim.
Oh, God.
Huh?
I was with you. I like Dan's shirt, by the way. Just
That's
throw
close
that
to
out.
close to the color. That's close.
There is a one small change that, looking for your input, where it says Georgetown Township, and there's a blue line, and then Georgetown Cemetery, being all blue words, line blue, cemetery blue, to separate the two words with a nickel finish, like you have on the circle on the sign. It would separate it a little bit more,
That's interesting.
because when you're going fast,
Yeah.
you know, that's a lot of blue with two sentences, and nothing separating that. I think that nickel finish would do that.
I would be personally fine with approving us moving forward with the signs with the allowance of you two being able to negotiate with Dan the final
Sounds good.
lettering and coloring of the.
I'm on board for that.
Thank
More
you.
consistency then on the color,
I
because
do
you guys
prefer-
seem to
I do
like the
prefer
blue.
consistency very
All right,
much.
all right.
I would like the signs to be consistent across, but I don't have a strong personal opinion on the.
Those who've expressed an opinion on the blue seem to like it. Carol, one of them, and then I've heard others like it. So,
I like,
whatever. You like, all right.
I like Chad's wisdom, because I can't handle anything this big to a decision on this. Particularly in colors. I rely for colors on this, and, you know, I'm sure you're different, Jim, but, you know, I go to someone's home and they say, what color are their walls? I can't tell you. I bet you she can tell you what color the walls are.
Yeah, and you like that blue.
And you can tell.
Yeah. Okay. You're the only one with a strong feeling about it, so that's here tonight.
I think it looks
yeah.
nice.
So
And that's
fine.
what she recommended,
Yeah.
and she's the professional, so I guess that's why
Yeah.
I, you know.
So we
I
have
think it looks
consensus
good.
on consistency and on the blue. All right.
But I'm with
That's
Chad.
somewhere,
If you
right?
want to discuss it with
Isn't
Dan
it?
and change something.
Well, I thought we already were somewhere, so that's the.
Well, no, you knew that we had to talk about this.
Right.
Are you on board? I'm lost in this.
We
one
brought
with
in a
this
sample.
discussion.
Yeah,
The sign is the color of the sample. The board approved the sample.
yeah.
So if we want to change the color, it's not a problem. We can change the color on the sign. but
Which
we-
is what she did. And I
No.
picked up on, no, she
No,
changed.
we also brought in a sample.
Yeah,
Before we approved the sign, we brought in sample letters with a little plate of what color the letters would be, so that we would know the colors
yeah.
that you chose. And so that's what the board approved, those colors. So we can change the logo blue to match the sign,
Right,
or we can change the sign blue. We
Committee.
have to paint those letters.
right. Right, before you do others.
Right. I think
Right.
she thought it would, if you look at it from a distance, which everyone's going to look from a distance, they wouldn't notice the difference in the blue. And I know the photograph I took from 6 feet away on the bright sunny day, it's very noticeable.
Yeah. Everybody's
So,
fine with that, but
yeah.
at least it had to be pointed out, that's not what we adopted. It's different from what we adopted, so let's be consistent.
But it is the color you approved for the
No,
sign.
don't go back to that. It isn't the logo we adopted.
Correct.
All
It's a
right.
different shade of blue, yes.
So,
It's a
Let's
steel-
We'll
get
change the
someplace
logo.
on this.
So
Right.
I think we're gonna take a vote. If it passes, Dan's gonna work with a signing company who's probably gonna give him a cut sheet that's gonna show like the 6 or 8 signs or
Yep.
however many signs on a single sheet that, what they look like. He could probably email that cut sheet out, and if somebody's got a serious
You know what they're
reservation.
going to look? They're going to look just like the one that's down at the cemetery. So there's no mystery there. And if
Right.
everybody likes that,
you wanna
then that's
change it,
great.
yeah, that's it,
They're the
yeah.
same when you paint the trucks, when you put it on the website, when you put it on a T-shirt, when you put it on the sign off a telephone pole, it should be the same thing. It shouldn't be, oh, now that's a navy blue, and now the last one was that. It should just be the same. Not being a color Nazi, I'm just saying I want consistency. So, all right. Why are you looking at me, Dale? We're fine, right? That's all we had to say. Is we're done.
I wouldn't have gotten you a soft drink if we weren't fine.
We're done. We're done, except for his nickel comment, which he'll have to take up with Dan. So,
Anything further?
forgot what the
See,
motion was.
Oh, this is on the,
Number 11.
yeah, I'm got lost in all this. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It is carried. Now the construction management and architectural services for the new senior center. You have there the motion before you, Lakewood and Progressive.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported to approving those, accepting those proposals. I had I have one concern, because in the proposal, I was absent from the last board meeting, but in the proposal, it says for I think it's $150 square foot per maximum, which I have no problem, but it says 10,000 square feet. And I just was interested if someone on the board could tell me where that figure came from. Okay, that's what I thought.
Go
I
ahead.
think when we were going to have sketches drawn up, Dan had mentioned the 10,000 square feet, and I think we approved for him to have Progressive draw up the sketches to see if it would fit there with the parking for 10,000 square foot. That's what I remember anyways.
Well, okay, and I can go with that, providing that there is the safety valve of before final, or even get into developing architecturally, that the senior center directors and so are involved with a committee or with the board, laying out, this is what we need, and I'm sure the architect can help on that, saying, well, for an exercise room for the things that you have in mind you want to put in, you're going to need X square feet. I just don't want that 10,000 feet to be in stone, that it may be 8, it may be 12, I don't know. But as I say, I wondered, where did this come? I know our original senior center was 20,000. And so just so I'm assured that the seniors and the senior center director and their help and us can justify the size of that building.
I would agree with that. I don't think any of us are under the impression that this is going to come back to be a 10,000 square foot on the dot building. It might be a little less, it might be a little more, and we might decide at the future date that it would need to be a lot less or a lot more, but that would need to come back to the board for that discussion. I think by virtue of entertaining this motion tonight, what we're really saying is,
It's a guideline.
Is this a project we want to do? If it is, yes, then start going down that avenue, which I would agree with John from the standpoint of, I think we've got to engage the seniors in the discussion and the staff in the discussion, which would figure out specifically what rooms are needed, how much square footage is needed for each room, involve the architect, and if you're going to have a dining hall to serve X number of people, you need 15 square foot per person, then how big of a room, and so on. So tonight really isn't anything other than accepting the proposals and kicking off what will ultimately be a lot of work in future decisions about authorizing whether or not the project moves forward, gets built, and bids awarded, and all of that. So there's a lot of design work that would need to be done between now and that point. But
And I'm comfortable with that approach. It's we're requesting a proposal. The contractor says, you're requesting a proposal for us for 10,000 square feet at 150 per square foot, one floor. I don't even know whether it's going to be one floor. So as long as that's an understanding of the board that this is still very much open, then I'm comfortable with it.
I agree with Chad, and I appreciate, Dale, what you're saying. When would we engage the seniors? And would it be beneficial to engage them now before we go too much farther down the road? Or
I would perceive, and correct me procedurally here, that we accepted the proposal, then we bring in the architect, and then that's when seniors seniors can put their input to the director beforehand, but then the director and committee or board sits down with the architect and says, this is how many square feet. we'd have. Would that be the correct procedure?
Well, you, in the past, for this proposal, you were setting kind of an idea, saying this is a target for the budget for what the whole project would be, and that's what the motion came last time to get this started. I mean, that's what it came
Was in
forward.
relationship to that?
The size came back with a per square price, also came with an overall budget for this project. So we have done multiple meetings, with the seniors and the seniors there about what they would like to see. And of course, we would do more. So we have a lot of the information already from them of the ideas they're talked about. I think if we were to go to them, we'd have to kind of show them something saying, hey, this is what we're thinking. You asked us in the past, what do you think about this? Because we've already gone there and they told us what they wanted. Now we kind of have to show them a building saying, does this meet what you showed us already?
When you say we have been there,
The township board, has already had a meeting there.
once 4 years ago.
Right, and we've talked to the director, who's also met with the seniors that are currently using the facility. But, you're targeting a much larger group, right? You're targeting the seniors of the community, not just the
Yeah.
current users.
Well, and I don't know whether all of you, I think you did, you all got a couple pages of the activities that go on and the maybe proposed activities that maybe will go on. And so I don't know at what point, who is responsible for laying out how many square feet for each thing?
We had talked in the, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We had talked in the fall about going to the senior center and maybe even having a board meeting there, but have open discussion with the seniors, ask them what their wants and needs would be. I do, what Dan has said, I know that there is good communication, but personally I support having a meeting there. I think that would unify them. I think they'd feel more a part of the process. I think there would be excitement that would build. And to have a building like this right on the lake, it's a beautiful location. As I said, I think they'd be very excited about it. And I'd like to see them included more. I am forgetting things down. Maybe we're to that point where we have to present them with something. But I'd like them to have input before, also a thought of, are we going to spend money and later on regret we spent it, as far as drawings?
I'd go maybe even a step further, which is that we had talked in the past about a potential ad hoc committee that would include, maybe the director of the seniors and someone else at large who would have a vested interest in that center, together with a board member too. When you get in, you guys have done building buildings in Chad too more than I have, but I know that there's a lot of decisions that get made that you wouldn't want to continually filter through this board necessarily, but an ad hoc committee would be a great place to, not that you would do away with the at-large gatherings and gathering of information, but then you have to have a certain select number of people that have to then carry the water. But I don't think we're out of order. I think I expected we were going to get to this point we've talked about, kind of vetting who we're going to use, and we've done that now. I think we feel comfortable with Lakewood, with with Progressive, and now is the time we would have expected to go get that input now and get that involvement, right?
Well, we at least can get this motion through and get that going. And then we don't have to make these other decisions tonight. These are just some questions and comments, and that we can face at another time if necessary. Is that acceptable?
I would like to have a meeting before we vote on this.
See, I'm fine
What are your
voting on
thoughts?
this just because it's a
It's a
proposal.
start.
It's a starting
To get
point.
it
I think
going.
everything we discussed is going to happen. I think this is the right order for it to happen, and that you
I don't have a problem.
you start a proposal that has a general target, and then you make the others. I'd rather do this than walk into the architects without a plan and try to ask them to tell us, or walk into the seniors, because I think we're going to walk out and go,
50,000
they just asked for the moon.
Yeah.
I think the 10,000 is a number we've batted around. It's not as big as, what was proposed at different points, but I think to orient us, it's roughly the size of one floor of this building. It's actually slightly smaller than one floor of this building, which is more space than they have currently, but it's not the moon. It's going to be enough space for us to do dining, plenty of activity space, plenty of ADA restrooms, and some private space, loud space. It's, I think it's a starting point, and we go work with the architects, and then we'll engage the seniors in the discussion, and we might come back and go, we really feel like it needs to be larger than that, and the board will vote and decide on that, or we decide we could get away with less than that.
We can get started on this, and then these other things can follow, whether it's meetings with all the seniors. That can be a little frightening. Anything else? So we're just on this motion, just authorizing.
I just want to add one thing. Do we want to be cautious how we call this building? Because I'm already getting a little negative feedback saying, is this a senior center, or is this a community, or is it both? And I think at some point we got to take a stance and make a decision on what you're going to call it.
I think that's a good point. I would advocate for calling it a community center, because even the word senior can be limiting, even to those who might meet others' definition of that word.
Let's put that on the agenda of things to talk about then, as we flesh this out, yeah?
Yeah. We might decide to call it a rec center, or undefined nondescript government building.
Or if you pay for it, we might.
Yeah. Naming rights are for sale.
Well, yeah,
right?
we'll consider a name to it. Okay, so
Long
any
place.
questions on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Please, opposed, nay. Is carried. Next is the request from City to Shore to display flags. That's promoting the slip and slide.
So moved.
Support.
Supported. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It is carried. Next is the Van Laar Drain Project. I'll entertain a motion to approve the project and have the cost borne at large by taxpayers.
So moved.
Support.
Or we have here the Drain Commissioner with us that will give us a little Drain Commissioning 101. Joel?
Well, thanks, board. Thanks for having me talk tonight. My voice is a little weak, so sorry about that. Again, I'm Joe Bush, your Water Resources Commissioner. Haven't been here in a while. So again, thanks for what you guys do and supporting me and cleaning your drains. Little background of what we've been doing. We've been doing a lot of clean out in Rush Creek. I don't know if you guys noticed that. A lot of stack of trees around. Reason being, for all the flooding we had back in 2013, we was reactive. After the flooding, we went in and tried to improve, and hopefully we don't have that issue again as snow is starting to melt and the temps are rising. So let's talk about the Van Laar Drain. I don't know if you're familiar with the Van Laar Drain. It's west of 36th, south of Baldwin over there behind the churches pretty much. One of the sections of the Van Laar is the open section of drain, which is north of Glen Hollow Drive, and we plan on cleaning the swell out. And that's about 1,000 linear feet. That's just one section of the Van Laar. There's several sections that will be connected here. The other one is the north side of Yorkshire Drive. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that area. We had numerous reports of flooding, even before 2013. So we're just trying to do some improvements to clean that up. There's actually a lot of 12-inch perforated pipe going to be installed in that section to help these people with flooding basements. So hopefully they got somewhere to go with their water now. And then the other section is Pheasant Run, and that is between Troy and Yorkshire, excuse me. There's another section there that we plan on actually do removing of some 12-inch storm, putting in some 24-inch storm, and then also putting in new 12-inch storm. So there's some damaged pipe in there. We just want to do improvements because, again, all the number of people that were flooded in that area. This is the Chapter 20 drain, which is picked up usually by the municipalities, the county, the township, and the road commission. We had a Chapter 20 board meeting a couple weeks ago. Your superintendent, Mr. Carlton, was there with the road commission, and then I'm a part of the Chapter 20 board, which is myself, the chair of the finance committee, the county finance committee is the chair of that, and the chair of the county commissioners. So it's us three on that board that make the decision on what do we move forward on and why are we doing it. So Van Laar was one of them that we went and approached. There's another one too, just for your update, is the Chicago Drive is another Chapter 20 that we kind of are trying to get, what I want to say, Dan, more involved in, because that's, I don't know if you guys know where that drain is, particularly in front of Myers, that runs along Cottonwood to Chicago Drive, and it ends up in Rush Creek. And I know Dan and I talked about maybe improving along a trail along Rush Creek at some point. So that's another project that we're kind of working on is, there's already storm sewer there, but there could be some issues. So we try to establish that and add some branches, make it more adequate for the purpose of providing good drainage in that area. So, and another problem that we've been looking at is Rosewood Industrial Drain, and that's, if you guys are familiar with Chicago Drive and where Port Shelton comes into 44th Street, all those lakes, that's behind the, you got one veterinarian clinic on the west side of Port Shelton where it comes around, and then you got the other pond just east of that, which is
Advance?
Advance, and then over there's an empty building now. There's another pond over in front of that one, so to the east of that. So all that is connected. We did a study with Brian Newhoff on figuring out for further development, we want to make sure we have proper retention so we don't flood people out in certain areas. So that's another study we did last year in 2014. Just a highlight of some of the things we're doing. I don't want to bore you. We've been working on a lot of drains. There's a lot of drainage in Georgetown Township. So again, board, I appreciate what you do and your support for me. And when we do call Dan and say, hey, we got an issue here, you guys have been very supportive on making sure we take your community and your constituents in your township and help them prevent flooding in the future. So thank you. If you have any questions for me.
Any questions for Joel?
Financing-wise, is it common that the taxpayers within the township where the drain is improved pay all the costs, or has the county historically contributed something? Or
For Chapter 20, it's usually the municipalities, but on a normal drain, it could be at the township so chooses, could pick it up along with the county and the road commission, but otherwise, some townships are putting it on the residents as well. Depends on the cost and how to absorb it, how to burden the cost. So it varies.
Joe, along Chicago Drive, like by Kentucky Fried Chicken in that area there.
That's where this Chapter 20, there's an open drain there.
Yes.
There could be potentially in the future, maybe enclosing that.
Okay, a chance of a sidewalk that we could put through there?
If you enclose it, yeah, that's what, probably the purpose of maybe enclosing it for your sidewalk.
Okay, are you looking with that drain going across the Kmart property, or?
That's it. That's the one we just had a meeting on.
So we would have to, if that were to be put up for sale, that'd be something that would need to be taken care of before we got to that point.
Well, currently that drain is working properly.
Okay.
As we know it. We just try to establish more of the branches and get it all, what I want to say, up to date, because we were some speculation of who owns that, who owns this, whose is that. So we put it all together. But yeah, you're exactly right. It runs right underneath the parking lot, right into Rush Creek from Kentucky Fried Chicken. And if your sidewalk goes in front of Kentucky Fried, we'd have to enclose that, so
Okay.
that's not a problem.
We were also hoping to be able to put a walkway from 8th Avenue Park down as far as we possibly could, certainly to that property.
Along Rush Creek?
Right.
Right.
What are your thoughts? How is something?
Well, I think it's something we need to do and get rid of that scrub brush and make it nice. And there is some flooding problems there, but I think if we can, it's already kind of a two-stage ditch already there, so I think it's something simply we can do.
Okay, a chance something like that might happen this summer?
That's totally up to your board and your superintendent. You're the board. I can't judge that, but it's feasible.
I'd love to see that happen. There's a couple possibilities of grants that we could use during that.
I think
along
Mr.
that
Smith
stretch.
here and his grant with the Maplewood is great. The bioswale is the way to go. I'm doing that on a lot of drains nowadays because it's points for DEQ. And the rain gardens and your wetland areas that you're recreating or wetland prevention is big with Lansing and legislators and DEQ and DNR. So I think your Maplewood's a great grant proposal.
Okay.
So.
Any other questions for Joel?
No, just appreciate being proactive with the drains, because when somebody's basement floods, I think we all hear it at that point, and obviously it's too late at that point, so
Right.
appreciate being real proactive with them.
Yep. Thanks.
But we all carry your card when they complain. Here's who to contact.
Bush.
2013 definitely showed how bad it could get in
Yeah.
Georgetown, so, thanks.
Thanks so much, Joe.
Joe.
Okay, there's the motion on the floor. Is anyone, other comments?
Just an observation. I've paid attention to this part of the budget in years past, and it's probably Murphy's Law or something, but every other year we've budgeted more money in this line and not come close to spending it. And this year we actually budgeted less money, which this request exceeds the amount. So just in recognition of, we will have to make some decisions and move some money around to fund this account appropriately. I think it's the right thing to do. I think we just way under allocated this account this year compared to what we've done in previous years on the budget. So sure thing, Joe, as soon as we knock the money down, you come asking.
We'll have to bring them in on the budget evaluation. Anything else? Okay, this is to approve the Chapter 20 Van Laaren Drain Project. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It is carried. Now we come to our second public comment portion of the meeting. Feel free, the same suggestions apply. Hi.
Good evening. Edward Sosa, 7927 Kinmont Court. First thing about the park, I think it's a great idea with the kayaking and all that idea. I'm a proud Grand Valley alum. I love the university, but I think you need to consider charging them also. If the township wanted to use their field house, they probably wouldn't let you do it for free. Unless you've got some sort of a deal cut with them for in-kind, I think you need to charge them because even as an alumnus, I can't use the field house for free. So I think you need to charge them for using that for kayaking. The second thing about the signs, I have to commend you. I think you had a great conversation tonight about the size, because I was thinking the same thing about, well, why should the township be able to put a bigger sign than the businesses or whatever? 45 miles an hour is 45 miles an hour. Why would it be different for the township than it would be for a business? So I think you really need to talk about that and save yourself a lot of trouble and complaints or whatever down the road, like somebody said about the staff having to answer those questions. I also commend you about your conversation about involving the seniors. I think lots of times what happens with leadership, we make decisions, the big decisions, but we don't pay attention to details. So I think that's a great idea. You're going to involve the director, the seniors. You're going to get buy-in from those seniors.
Mechanisms for the roads. The state of Michigan is kind of unique that uses a sales tax component on gas that's assessed at the pump that doesn't go to the roads because it goes toward the K through 12 education component. So this is one of those avenues is trying to clear up that funding misfunction, I would say, that there's taxes being generated at the pump that's not going to the roads. So if this proposal goes forward, we clean up that funding mechanism, and then every dollar that's generated at the pump will go to the roads. But in doing so, we created a void, and that void is about the billion, near $1 billion that we lose for K through 12 education. To backfill that, that's where the 1% or the 1 cent per dollar sales tax component comes into be. The difficulty is describing that and articulating that in a 30-second soundbite. Usually to be successful, you need to get that really synchronized into a real sharp soundbite. Fundamentally, policy, we cleaned up a lot of issues in this ballot. How do we communicate that to the general public? This is going to be a bigger lift. One aspect I do see a benefit from this is an opportunity to educate the residents of the state of Michigan of how road funding does work. Also, it gives us opportunity to educate to the residents of the state of Michigan of the need. It's $1 billion plus per year. $1 billion is not going to solve the issue at one time. Some people have the belief that is. Right now, the state of Michigan has $3.5 billion for funding its roads annually. The need to, and I'll be truthful on this, you bring additional $1 billion in, or $1.2 billion, it's not going to vastly improve the quality of roads. It's going to kind of more or less maintain that we have with some slight improvement. And this is on an annual basis. Currently, right now, we're defunding our roads, and not enough money is being generated to keep the roads up to a proper standard. A scary situation, many of us travel down M6, the Ottawa County portion. Have you noticed how that road has deteriorated?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in need of repair.
Yes.
Okay. M6 is not paid for yet. We are still paying on the bonds issued for that construction. The state of Michigan has over $2 billion of bond payments that, of this highway funding, when the money comes in each year, that takes $200 million right off the top. That's how desperate we are in our road funding. So we have M6 in desperate need of repair, and it's not paid for. So you can see how we're in a deficit situation when it comes to funding our roads.
Roger, the first thing people say is, why not increase the gasoline tax? Well, what should we say to them?
Well, that was a part of one of the proposals going forward, just do an increase in gasoline. If you put a additional taxation on the gasoline without solving some of the fundamental problems we have in our current system, how we tax gasoline, we become an outlier. Then our price of gasoline in the state compared to our neighboring states is problematic. And I've talked to some owners of gasoline stations, or basically convenience stores that are along the state border, and basically you have just put a zero value on their multi-million-dollar investments because the price differential will be that great that people drive 10 miles or 15 miles to Indiana, Ohio, or Wisconsin to buy their gasoline. So we got to be very careful when we develop tax policy that we don't disenfranchise certain parts of the public. And that's why when you concentrate a tax based on a too small group, such as an example, when you take a cigarette tax, well, one of the purposes we raise that tax up is to reduce use of cigarettes. And we do that by placing a high tax burden. We do not want to do that in like a road funding scenario. If you concentrate the taxes on too small of a group of people, the economics will show their hand. You'll have decreased revenue in that tax avenue, and also you disenfranchise a specific group of people. So that's where I'm a believer of utilizing the sales tax component. It's more broad-based, more participation. You have skin in the game for more of those who use public transportation and those other aspects. So, but good question. Any other questions at this point?
Thank you, Roger.
Okay. And feel free to call my office anytime, any questions. I know some of the good folks in Georgetown are frequent callers and emailers, and that's always keep us on task. So again, it's a privilege being here, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we still are in the public comment period. Hi, John.
Hello, I'm John Cade, 7869 Parkside Court. Regarding the chicken ordinance, first, I have no intention of raising chickens in my yard, but I know about a month ago, people did bring it up, and the board said to talk to the planning commission, and then apparently the planning commission did nothing other than, and it's not going to meet for the rest of this month. So as was suggested, maybe on the next board meeting, if you could have put it on the agenda and make some type of recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks. No one else? Okay, we'll close the public comment period and go to the discussion and information period. You notice one of the things on there is Veterans Plaza. Do you have anything preemptory to say there, or you just want to open it for the board?
Just for the board is fine.
Okay.
How about why don't you preempt it just briefly with the whole protocol with Greg Hondard and the
Why
chicken
don't you
issue?
put there what the minutes that the planning commission actually did on the agenda for us there, or on the screen. You're gonna move that screen over? There you go. You can see here, this is from the minutes of the planning commission meeting there. If I can see the paragraph there, right there in the middle, the consensus of the, stop it there, was that they were not opposed to reviewing and adopting an ordinance allowing chickens in residential districts after obtaining and reviewing ordinance from neighboring municipalities. And this is what they're waiting for, the model ordinance from the Michigan Township Association and Michigan State University, which is due out to come in March. So they're hoping for that to come out in March, and then they want to develop a model ordinance. Obviously, that's not going to fit the timing that was proposed today by Mrs. Larkin. You know, as far as getting something adopted in March, that's not going to work with that. But that's what the Planning Commission decided from the board. So they're waiting for that information, and hopefully we'll proceed forward at that time. So,
you know how to interpret what Greg is said to have mentioned in terms of coming back to us? Or it doesn't read it that way, I don't know.
Well, I mean, each person can make their own comments about how they feel or particular. It doesn't, I mean, but as the planning commission as a whole, this is what they decided, is that they're not opposed to reviewing and they intend to do so. And we have some neighboring ones, and a lot of neighboring communities are actually adopting them right now as well.
Yeah.
So
I get the impression from tonight that they'd punted, but they didn't punt, they've just...
they're
I
waiting
guess-
for this
Okay,
information.
all right. So they intend to take it up so far as you know?
Yes. So
I've looked at several of the neighboring ones, and I don't know, this is not rocket science. I can develop a policy or an ordinance that you can debate in 2 hours. I don't think there's any reason why we can't, if we feel that we are willing to have backyard chickens, we could develop an ordinance that would be all set for a little debate, and I don't see, it's not a big deal. If you read the ordinances, now some go on ad infinitum, on and on, you know, but the basic structure of them is, to me, quite simple. Much, much less complicated than trying to decide what color there should be on a sign. Much less complicated.
My understanding from Rich Vanderkluck, who is the board member on the planning commission, was that the planning commission was going to discuss it, though, correct?
yes,
Am I
that's
correct
what
in that?
that's what they decided.
Yeah,
They're planning on
that's-
discussing it. They have the sample ones that we have from other neighborhoods already. That's what they do have. They're waiting for the MTA's model ordinance.
And it was my
So-
understanding that they were going to continue with this, rather than put it, I mean, it wasn't supposed to come back to the board. They wanted to continue with it, correct?
And
Okay.
guess where the MTA is going to get their model ordinance? They're going to look at all the ordinances, which you've been looking at several, and I've been looking at several. And that's where they're going to write, well, that's something we can do.
I don't disagree with you, Dale. I'm just, my question is more along the lines of, does this normally originate out of planning commission, or does it originate here?
I don't know if there is a normal. The planning commission in the past has said, no, we don't see a need or we want an ordinance for chickens. Then the board stepped in and says, well, we're not too sure. Now, the board can pursue and make an ordinance and bypass the commission. But they said, okay, planning commission, you look at it. Now the planning commission says, well, we want to wait for MTA and Michigan State University, and I'll bet you that won't be out by March.
I mean, there's 3 ways to initiate an ordinance. The
I'm not
board
asking
can-
about the different ways as much as the common.
Well, the most common is the planning commission will initiate, but that's part of the confusion is any citizen can also initiate, and that's what that fee part was. So if a citizen wanted to do it, they can initiate, the board can initiate, or the planning commission can initiate. We have, as a board, the board has initiated them in the past when they wanted them to be considered. It has happened, but the planning commission initiates most of the ordinances for zoning.
Have you read any of the ordinances, Ms. Waringa?
I haven't. I imagine it's not rocket science, and
I wish
I don't think we debate very long about it.
No, take 15 or 20 minutes, you can read 3 or 4 of them.
I noticed no one here came, though, with a model ordinance to have us adopt, so I'm guessing that we had in mind that the planning commission was going to propose it, and...
Yeah, or we would have sent it to a committee to develop an ordinance, you know. You're right.
Is there support for a meeting before our next meeting where we'd have a chance to discuss this issue? Along with, I'd like to see the Veterans Recognition Park, the Senior Center, whether or not we have a Rush Creek pathway, if we can get that rolling, where we stand with the Kmart property. I'd like to throw this concern in there also. And I'd like to see us do this before we meet in 2 weeks. And I'd suggest next Monday. I need someone to support me.
Support.
And next Monday would be okay if it's at 4 o'clock, but we have a mineral mining meeting that night, correct, Manette? Is that the 16th? Yes.
This is not a question of a motion or a support. You have to get a written signature from you and the 2 of you and submit it, and we'll call a meeting.
Want to write it on the back
But we
of
do
that?
have a mineral mining meeting that night, so it would have to be
They can-
earlier.
They can schedule a meeting.
Okay, anything else?
I'd like to submit a written request for a meeting next Monday at 4 o'clock here at the Georgetown.
Can we say 4:30? We've got services at 4.
4:30?
That's not services.
It's not services?
We do have services.
Oh, yeah.
I just wondered
We do
how
have
long the agenda
services,
is.
too.
Do I need a second written on that?
Yeah, it just has your friend to sign it. Okay, there's a meeting.
Is it 4:30 or?
4:30, we heard?
30.
Is
We've
that-
got services at
We have
4, so
services
I'd
at
say
4.
4:30.
Are we having discussions as far as other discussions right now?
Yeah. We will call the meeting. Would you please put on there the things that you want?
I've got some.
It doesn't have to be on there now, but.
I've got something typed
You
out
call
right
the
now.
meeting. Okay, good. And that'll help us.
Someone correct me if I'm wrong, can I discuss the offer regarding Chicago Drive?
No? You can discuss, yeah.
I would highly recommend to this board, based on my 33 years of experience as a real estate agent, that we don't drop the ball with a ready, willing, and able buyer who's come to the window saying, I want to buy, and that there's a discrepancy as far as price, which happens in every real estate transaction. And that I think we need to expedite so that we, as a board, become experts, because none of us are, when it comes to commercial real estate, what the real value of a piece of real estate is or is not, to get a professional appraisal, to let the potential buyer know that we're doing this. The benefit, it tells the buyer we're still interested and are willing to negotiate. It buys us time to educate ourselves as far as what true market value is. And hopefully, if this is done quickly, perhaps by Monday, the next meeting, we would have this appraisal available to determine where we want to go with this particular buyer. And if the sale doesn't happen with this buyer, now we're all on the same page that we have a professional opinion that this is the market value of the property. I want to remind all of you that when we negotiated KFC and the shoe place, we put a value of $750,000 each on those properties, or it was $1.5 million. When we got the professional appraisal back, I'm going by memory at this point, it was in the area of around $475. A big difference of $750 versus $470. And if we all were real estate experts and thought the property was worth $750, we would have lost that sale, would have lost that tenant, and would have had another vacant building. But because the buyer educated us, they paid for the appraisal, it opened our eyes to say, hey, maybe we need to reevaluate what the value of this, and we made a sale. So my point is, let's order a professional appraisal as quickly as possible. Let the buyer know that we're still interested in trying to put a sale together and that we're getting an appraisal done on the property. Whether that requires a motion or further discussion, you can direct me. And I'm open for input.
So your message is don't trust realtors and their evaluations?
They're not the ones that give you the bank loan.
No.
Ron, I'm sensitive to that, and I think you bring up some very good points. I don't feel I'm ready to vote on it right now, but I'd sure like to discuss it Monday. I think what you're saying is powerful. It's something we need to be concerned about.
And I want to go back to you, John, and all of you have gotten photocopies of my emails to you. I'm not going to tell you who the tenant is as far as publicly. I believe that's confidential, but you got photos. And what a pleasant surprise for me to go to this tenant, parking lot full, indoors full, family activity.
I bet you lasted 10 minutes.
Oh, I've been there before, so it's just a great place. But what I can tell you in 33 years of real estate, and Chad will probably agree with us, you don't negotiate and sit on this and say, I'm going to think about it. No. You got someone that's hot, who has a party, who has a tenant that wants to fill the space. If we wait, the tenant's asking Mr. Nelson, what's taking so long? Let's look for a new location. We need to be proactive and we have a responsibility to the township to sell the property and to pay ourselves back for what we purchased the property for. And you delay, maybe Mr. Nelson would like to have that tenant go in, but if I were the tenant, it doesn't look like the township wants to sell. Haven't heard anything back from them. Let's look for another piece of property.
Didn't we make a counter?
It wasn't acceptable, and the counter was absolutely ridiculous because we're basing it on 85% of the asking price. And if I were to ask all of you, how do you base the value of the property? I don't think any of us could give a legitimate value of the property. That's why you get an appraisal, a professional appraisal. It becomes a sales tool to help sell the buyer as well as the seller what the value is. And we got someone that wants to build a 100,000 square foot building in Georgetown Township, and we're scratching our heads and saying, boy, let me think about it. I'm not really sure if I'm ready to order that appraisal or not. My answer to you is I'm glad you don't sell real estate. Because I'd be saying, let's figure out how to make this happen. Let's figure out how we can get the seller and the buyer together.
Was that 100,000 square foot?
With it, well,
I thought it was 10.
10 per acre.
Oh, okay.
yeah. And when think about it, we've all lived in Genesee 20 plus years. When is the last time someone's built a 100,000 square foot building in downtown?
I think Kmart was the last one.
Hobby Lobby's out of, and the good point there, no sale in 8 years. And the best prospective buyers, who? A possible church. That just tells you that there's not a great demand.
Well, we're speaking, I mean, we're speaking in veiled terms so that you're piquing people's interest without knowing details, but I think the discrepancy is more like a chasm in terms of their offer price. And I also believe that our duty of the township isn't just to sell it, it's to sell it for the right price. We've got that obligation, and I think in the first 60 days, it's hard to determine, because to me, the fair market value is what a willing buyer and a willing seller are willing to purchase for in an arm's length transaction. And we haven't given it enough time for an arm's length transaction to develop, and he is very far apart.
And that's where
I'll go this far on it. If somebody wants to obtain a proposal for a commercial appraisal so that we know what that would cost and the timing and everything involved, I will be happy to entertain a vote on that proposal for an appraisal. I'm not prepared to decide tonight, yeah, I want to go and do it, because I don't know what it costs. I don't know what's involved in it, the timing. I mean, you may know that, but I don't, because it's been a long time since I've obtained a commercial appraisal. So if somebody wants to bring a proposal like that back, I'll entertain that as a part of the overall decision making. I agree with Jim's comments. I don't think we were close. So, you know, the other side of it was, I believe there was an offer from the developer to have a discussion face to face if we wanted to entertain that. And if somebody or some group of the board wanted to do that, that may be time well spent. It might not, but
I'd be open to that if it involved a discussion of him gobbling up less of the prime real estate and tucking himself in a less noticeable area where his price would match more appropriately the acreage that he would need.
so it might be worth a discussion just to sit down and just talk about, here's how far apart we are, and the things that could help us get to more common ground might include those types of discussions. So
I'm going to interrupt here a little bit. We can pick this up afterwards, but the Smith organization has been very, very patient sitting here, and we're taking their time, and that's one of the discussion items that is on here. And so I think out of courtesy and expediency, we owe them to address that issue, and then we can go back to if that's, well, that's just what I think we should be doing. So let's hold that in abeyance, and either that or for next Monday, and let's talk about the Veterans Plaza design and the sketches that you have that have been submitted, and comments, and see if this is a working model, if there's some input you would like to give to both to the board and to the Smith
Yeah.
organization.
Yep. You're right.
Jim? I see a puzzled look on your face.
No, I just, you called on me, I just looked up. I thought, forgive me, but I thought that we had talked about a more simple pentagramish type design that had flagpoles at the different points and was not so elaborate as what we received. And that's setting aside, of course, my contention that we're putting it in the wrong place. But setting that aside, just for design's sake, I thought that for that spot, we talked about a simpler design, thinking that people wouldn't, in a spot like that, be walking around it much anyway. But that's my recollection.
I don't think we conveyed a pentagon to you. That was the original plan on the corner of Baldwin and Main, that design. We really gave no direction to Smith Associates, I don't think. We just kind of gave him free will to come up with something, which he did, and that's where we're at. And now if we want alterations, or we want to eliminate things, or want something different, this now is the time to instruct.
My thinking was that we would have behind the fountain maybe something representing the 5 branches of the military. I know in our other design that we had a circle with a star, and then the star had points, and that was going to be the 5 branches of the military. And then maybe like having a wall with bricks behind it. We sold those bricks. That was just my thinking. And I wasn't real crazy about the eternal flame or the obelisks part too much. So that's just my thoughts.
I actually agree with Carol. I thought there would be the flags, and I felt the same thing about the flame and the center figure. And this looks beautiful, but it was not what I was expecting.
Were you familiar, Mike, with the original design? Okay, so we can't really hold you accountable for that.
The kind of the third generation of what I prepared for you, this one here, the original design, and costs associated with that design, sketch. The plan you saw, the very first one, and then I think it was requested that we try to break the cost down to $250,000, which is what the plan you saw was modified. I basically gave him a high number and a low number because of bricks and pavers, and I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, okay, that's what I figured.
Yeah.
And we've seen, not for Veterans Memorial, but we've seen a lot of designs on that piece of property, before even the fountain.
One thing I want to talk about the flame. So and I shared with Dan today, my daughter Tiffany, was disagreeing with the open gas flame. And so the flame that was represented in this is a symbolic flame, okay? It's built out of, I believe it's bronze or brass, okay? So it's the shape of a flame, but it does not have any open gas to it. So you get that, and that's not a theme that I originated. I mean, the eternal flames in these kind of memorials is something that, I don't want to say it's trite, but there's a lot of them. But the one that she found, and that was actually a manufactured product, and I don't know the name of it.
Yes, I can get you the pictures. We just got them today.
And typical of me, I told Tiffany I didn't like it, and she said, I think it's a better idea, and then maybe it's a better idea. So, these kinds of designs, there are all kinds of options and opportunities and different ways to present them. One thing about that particular site, and some of the things that I did see and want to suggest, is that the road is very, very wide as you enter the town. So starting with the basics is that if we're going to bring people in there, we need to have a spot that they originally, I had walls around the outside of that, stone walls, and then the cost went to wrought iron type thing. And then the bricks, we talked about bricks that would be memorial bricks.
Yes.
Radial bricks on this design, with radial bricks.
No sound waves.
Would be like 8x8 pavers instead of 4x8, 8x8. So we use those before we carve in, lettering in, more so. But again, total options.
Yeah, we didn't give you a great deal to go on, and so, your accountability is not high, because we had a meeting to say, hey, Mike, this is kind of what we want,
One thing about that space is with the fountain there, and the two spaces, you have spaces at both ends, which was kind of the concept of the design. I called it kind of a linear plaza, where you ended up with opportunities to say different things in those areas. And so instead of someone just arriving at the space and say, okay, they could park, arrive, walk from one area to the other, whatever kind of detailed signage and memorials and how, and again, I talked to Denny, someone to really help us on what you want to say, and that's a pretty in-depth kind of evaluation. So, as I told them, these kinds of designs, I'm totally, want to sit down and get people's input and ideas.
Your input, Mr. Tuttle?
So I'll preface my comments by saying I still have reservations about the whole project in general.
That's right, you don't care.
So
10th on your list.
you can discount my feedback.
All right. Who else would like? Oh.
I do, I'm always impressed with the work that you guys do and frankly with the level of artistry that you bring to it. So very impressed with how you incorporated some feedback and really kept the fence and protected the pedestrians that would be in that area and really created that barrier between the road. I share a couple of the reservations about the flame. I kind of had the same reaction. I think it was the word gas on one of them that had me thinking that it was an open flame. So,
It was originally until
yeah.
this is a better idea.
So, but I like the way that you've incorporated some of the pavers in. I'm kind of indifferent on the obelisk. I'm fine with one flagpole. I know we've talked about multiple flagpoles with all the branches being represented. Personally, I'm fine with a single American flagpole. I would just also recommend that whatever design we finally arrive on, I think it would be a good thing for us to invite those who have already purchased bricks or are interested in purchasing bricks just to a open comment period. Let them come in because we showed them something different, I think, when we were selling bricks, and it might be good to show you what we were showing them when we were selling bricks, that you can have an idea of when they talk about the star shape and that. So that's kind of my comments all over the place.
I'd like to take it a step farther, that I do think the people that paid for the bricks should be involved in this, but I don't think this is something that has to take a long time. I think we're talking just a couple weeks, but I think it would be important to have a committee set up that takes a look at this and gets input from veterans, have them directly involved in it. Again, I don't think this would take very much time. And certainly people that have bought bricks, I think that's important.
I just think we've got to be in somewhat agreement on what we want to show them before we create that opportunity.
It's committees. Did you, you had your input, Ron?
I've never had a discussion with you, Mr. Smith, but I'd be curious in your input. I'm different from the board a little bit. I'm all in favor of a memorial. The question is the location of Chicago Drive and Main Street very, very busy? You got the love tattoo on one side, and you got the muffler man on the other. And I look at your beautiful drawing that you did for Rosewood Park, and I'm really in favor of Rosewood Park, or not Rosewood Park, but Maplewood Park, because there's a huge open green space when you come into the entry where you could just do a beautiful place. You would have the reflection of the water. Traffic wouldn't be an issue. Love tattoo is not an issue. Muffler man's not an issue. The noise pollution, trying to make a left-hand turn in or out of that location? And then the question is going to come, what will the public think of why would they build a Veterans Memorial at that location at the highest traffic count? What were they thinking? And I'm just curious, and there's not a right or wrong answer, but as a professional, what are your thoughts of that location versus maybe a Maplewood Park or somewhere else in the township?
I think the only location, you've been a couple locations, you talked about the, called the Triangle, Baldwin.
Yep.
That's a great location for something. I'm not going to say that's a great location, but I'm not sure parking and access and circulation, but that's a highly visible opportunity that I think you need to consider something. So maybe that was not, so then you asked me about the cemetery. I thought the cemetery didn't work well at all.
Okay.
There's just not spaces there, and I'm not sure either. This is me now, you asked me, I don't think the atmosphere is going to do. I hadn't ever, considered or thought about Maplewood Park as the big open space at the end. That's possible. That would be a totally different kind of design. So, this location and part of I think part of the obelisk and part of where the obelisk is, those shrubs around the outside, maybe it's going to be taller for a closure, so you can see my sense of wanting to get separation from the busy road was inherent in design, so at least that would reflect that I'm a little uncomfortable with the busyness of the space. We put the obelisk there so that people who are driving by, it's behind there is some sense of, well, what is that? Why is that there? Given 3 or 4 or more choices, you might look at other alternatives. And I can't, without sitting down and getting into your thought process on that site, necessarily reflect on it being the best. How's that?
Yeah, you're right. It puts you in a little difficult position because I know there's kind of two camps. There's solemnity. This should be a solemn place, quiet, peaceful, so on. And there's another group says, no, this should be a very visible place where everyone sees it. So there's not a right or wrong. It's what this board would choose to do. Just a kind of a brief idea on the board, who liked the basic concept of that first design we saw? You don't care. You
I
don't want
liked it.
you only want one flag. So
I like the first one.
Are we talking what we were going to have on the corner?
of original plan of Main Street and Baldwin.
I thought it was going to be a modification of that.
Okay.
And that was,
And see,
and I gave
Mike
input.
never saw that.
Okay.
You?
I like the simpler. Yeah, especially if it's going to be at that.
Okay. So I think it's incumbent that we let you see that so you get some idea. They like that. Any other opinions on this before I give my half hour? Again, I really appreciate your professionalism and your ability, and it's always nice, and we're not being critical, but you have nothing, you don't get to express yourself unless you come up with an idea. And I can tear your idea apart, but I can't even come up with the idea. So that's a good start for us. And I also like the original, and I don't care too much for the flame. One thing that I would like the board to consider, I would like to see you work with the original in the back. We will get you that. You are much more creative than I ever could be. I just wondered if there's any way in your creativity not as a centerpiece, but whether you can work something on the sides or in the sides and around to the back with the fountain. Maybe not. For consideration also, it was mentioned earlier, we never talked about it to, I don't think even to Mike, but this was the original site of the old mill. The old mill still carries some credence in there. There's people with pictures, and it was a 100-year structure that came down in '63, and not that I want to rebuild it, but I often wondered if some stone monument placed and maybe out there in place of where the flame was, of signifying that this was the site of the old mill.
1963?
Wow. 1863, it was built.
Holy cow.
I remember when they built that. It was quite it was all hewn wood. I mean, you can see the adze marks on it.
Not sure my parents knew each other.
Went down in '63, I know. I was probably the only one here that was alive then. Okay, so much is for that. I'll talk to you later, Mike. Okay, so let's at least go with that and work with that. We'll get you that, Mike, and I appreciate your work, and I'm sorry for taking up so much of your night this evening.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Mike.
you.
Any other from the board? If not, of course, a meeting, a motion to adjourn is always in order after.
I'll make that motion.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It's carried. Thank